My name is Adam and I work for Sipsmith Gin. I look after the west of Scotland for them. And this evening we're going to be talking a wee bit about the medicinal history of Juniper, a wee bit of gin's real dark past that it's had, and then we're going to talk a wee bit about how gin came to be what it is now. And that obviously has a wee bit to do with Sipsmith. And then at the end we're going to be sampling some of our London dry gin, and then there's going to be a wee couple of minutes for some questions. Okay? So can anyone tell me what the main botanical in gin is? Excellent. Otherwise we'd be all very confused at the name of this bloody festival, wouldn't we? So, juniper, of course. And juniper has been used medicinally as far back as ancient Egypt, where they used it actually in part of the mummification process. They used it as an embalming agent. It was also used by the ancient Greeks as a mild form of anesthetic. The berries have got this quality that they can be utilised. Then we jump forward to the 14th century. And does anyone recognise this rather sinister-looking chap? So, 14th century, bubonic plague. This chap here was a plague doctor. He was handling the really ill people. He was handling the dead bodies that had been infected with the plague. Wasn't too pleasant. However, juniper was believed to act as a sort of filter. And his lovely beak here, it was actually filled with crushed up juniper berries, and it was believed that if he was to breathe any harmful infection, that the juniper berries would filter that out. However, juniper these days has actually got a few medicinal qualities. It's believed to help with gout, it's believed to help with rheumatoid arthritis, there's high blood pressure, which, you know, like you've had a hard week, you want a gin and tonic. And however, juniper wasn't utilised as we think of it now until the sort of 16th century, and that was with a chap called Dr. Francis Sylvius, and he realised that juniper had this anaesthetic property that I'm not too sure. You're all familiar with juniper berries. They're quite tough, they're quite hard. You wouldn't like to eat a whole bowl full of them, you know? It would kind of be like the sort of cinnamon challenge or the cracker challenge. So what he did is he actually, this is the first time that juniper had been used in a distilled spirit, and this was the birth of what we now know as Jenifer. And so with Jenifer, it starts off with a new make spirit, and they use a wash with the juniper berries. And so it's kind of like halfway between a sort of junipery whiskey or like a malty gin. That's how I would describe it. So Dr. Francis Sylvius invented this, and he made a lot of friends. And I mean, these friends, you know, they like to maybe self-medicate every now and again. I'm not saying that it was a case of hypochondria. I think it was they just liked a good swally. And so Holland being quite a commercial and enterprising country, there was a couple of brands that really jumped on this and started to make it commercial. Now, the first time that Britain got its taste of Jenifer was during the 30 Years' War. And the 30 Years' War was actually Britain and the Dutch were fighting against Spain. So Britain's getting ready to attack Spain, as are Holland. Holland beat them to the punch. They charge right over with not a care in the world. And that's because they've got something quite clever. On everyone's belt, they have a canteen filled with Jenifer, and everyone's got what then became known as Dutch courage. And so Dutch courage then was known running into battle, you know, really, really gung-ho, or should we say gin-ho. And so it's not quite the same. I'd maybe have a couple of drinks and maybe go over and chat to a girl. Not quite the same. This is you were risking your life. So the Brits went back to the UK, and you know they still had this real taste for this Jenifer, this junipery delight. And this was when Prince William of Orange, not sure if I should be mentioning him since it was old firm today, but we'll risk it. You look like a bunch of reasonable folk. And so when he took over the throne, he realised he looked at British drinking culture. It's not quite the same what it was today. Everyone was drinking French wine, lovely high-end brandies, you know, the people that could afford this. And he said, you know what, we're at war with the French. probably isn't great the fact all the booze hounds in my country are funding the enemy through their drinking habits. So what he did is he changed the law and he made it legal for you to distill at home. Provided two things. One, you had a sign outside your front door, and this sign said, "I wish to distill on these premises." And you had to have that sign there for 10 days. Who knows why it's 10 days? It was just 10 days. The other thing was, with regards to making a spirit, you have to start with, you need to ferment a form of sugar. And this can be found in anything. It needs to start from a starch. However, he made it law that you had to use British corn, because at the time there was actually an abundance of corn. It was rotting in the fields. There wasn't enough people there to eat it. They were just really producing far too much. So with these two laws being passed, and with our extensive trade routes with the rest of the world, we've got quite a lot of other spices and nice things. Yeah, we'll pop that in. And thus modern gin was born. And this, we really got a taste for it. And in 1720, there was 1 in every 4 structures in London were producing their own gin. And think about 1 in every 4 houses. You can barely walk through Partick and not get pissed before you get to Partick Cross. But think of it then, 1 in 4. Come on. Loads and loads of gin. And it was actually, they were producing so much that it worked out to be, I believe, 14 gallons per head per year. 14 gallons, that's, what's that, 70 litres? So, yeah, it's a good Saturday night. So, this did actually have a wee bit of a health impact. And in 1720, the birth rate actually was overtaken by the death rate, and population was in decline, which isn't ideal. You know, probably not the best. Fair enough. You've got more space. Houses prices probably drop, but you know that's not really at the forefront. You want to see your nation healthy, and so the government did what they do best. They taxed it, of course. So the government implemented a £1 tax on every gallon produced. And £1 tax on 14 gallons over the course of the year. So your average Joe Bloggs was paying around, I think about 17, 18 grand just on the tax, just for their gin fix. And now you think this would maybe make everyone go away off gin, maybe find something else? No. What that did was it actually drove gin underground. And not in like a cool, trendy way, I've got a password to go in, but no, like to a club or whatever. No, like bad underground. Like people were instead of using corn, they weren't using corn. It was too expensive, and like then you had to like say why you were having the corn. They would use the sweepings off pub floors. They'd use like the leftovers from their food, anything that they can get this base sugar from. So much so that there were also, juniper was scarce, and due to the scarcity of juniper, they wanted to use something else that was a similar flavor profile. Turpentine. They used turpentine. And then they were like, oh, this isn't tasting very good, but it's still getting the same effect. Well, and then this was when Old Tom was born. Old Tom was a style of gin where they added sugar to mask the rest of the flavor. So, cool, that's fine. It's not really worked, this new Gin Act of 1736. It's not really worked. Cool, well, we'll just scrap that. And then they tried a few other things, quite a few different things that didn't work either. And it wasn't until 1751 where they introduced the £50 Act. I'm pretty sure most of you have heard of that. There's another gin brand that's called £50. Nope, cool. Cool, so the £50 Act was to have your license and to have a still, you had to pay £50. £50 is about the equivalent of about £75,000 in today's money. So safe to say, if you go knocking on 1 in every 4 doors, most of them can't scrape together 75p, yet alone £75,000. So then there was only 2 distilleries in London. So that was, the first rule was the £50, and they also then implemented the fact that you had to distill 1,800 litres per still run. And so there's not any bathtubs or sinks. If there are, B&Q have ripped you off. Like that's a weird one. And so that was fine. Gin sort of went out of popularity. Things became a wee bit more normal. At the time, also alongside the £50 Act, William Hogarth was commissioned to make these 2 paintings. Do you recognise them? You've seen them once or twice? Someone else has been to a gin talk before? So on the right hand side, we have Gin Lane, and on the left-hand side, we have Beer Street. And on the left-hand side, everything's merry, everyone's quite large, buildings are being erected. There's a chap up here, he's just cut out ever so slightly, he's painting, because beer's like, makes you intelligent. On the right-hand side, not quite the same. On the right-hand side, we have this guy's gnawing on a bone with his dog wrestling in it. This shop here is actually the pawnbrokers. This guy's selling his tools to get his next gin fix. This woman here is selling her pots and pans, probably a mother with a big family to look after and cook and feed. Nah, pots and pans, I need a stiff one. And so here, we have this lady here who's dropping her child. She's so off her face on gin. And this is where it gets a wee bit more sinister and dark. See these marks on her legs here? It's not anything to do with the plague or anything like that. It's actually syphilis. And this woman has been selling her body to get her next gin fix. Pretty dark. So, after that, gin sort of mellowed out. We weren't drinking it quite as much. Until Prohibition actually hit. And Prohibition, we had Americans coming over here and drinking here. And so for example, the Savoy cocktail book, and from that era, of the late 1800s, early 1900s, 40% of the cocktails are gin, 1% is vodka. And everything went along quite smoothly until the 1980s with Bombay. And Bombay, blue bottle, oh, what's that? You know what, it's wealth, it's nice, it's fancy. The sapphire, that's a precious stone. Yeah, we'll have that. So the 80s saw a skyrocket in gin sales. It was fantastic. They really changed the bottle. Because you know what? A blue bottle? Well, it's usually in a clear or a green bottle. You know what? This is great. Things trundled on quite well after that. Your gin and tonics in your pubs, Schweppes did quite well as well. Until 2001, and we had another gin brand that really blew everything out of the water. Can anyone guess who it is? Sorry? It wasn't Gordon's. It was no, Tanqueray had been around for a long time. He was one of the people that paid the £50 tax. It is, of course, Hendrick's. Scottish, a black bottle, that lovely apothecary style bottle. And guess what? We're going to garnish it with cucumber. Yeah. Lime sales plummeted. You know, I think anyone that's working for William Grant and Sons actually gets arrested on site in Mexico because of this. And you know what? Bartenders went crazy for it. You know, quite right. They really turned everything on their heads. Gin sales creeping along, doing quite well, till 2009, when we came along. So 2009, well, I'll talk to you a wee bit of how we got before we got to 2009. And it starts around the same time, 2001, 2002. Two of our owners, Sam and Fairfax. These guys here. This is Sam. This is Fairfax. Sam and Fairfax were childhood friends, and they knew each other for a long time, and they lost contact. They both ended up working in the drinks industry. Sam was working for Fuller's, the London Brewers, famous for London Pride, and Fairfax was working for a little small drinks company. You might have heard of them, Diageo. Cool. So, you know, don't worry if you haven't heard of them. So they were both working in America, Fairfax doing Diageo things, and Sam really pushing London Pride to America, which was at the start of the whole craft beer revolution. And so when they met up, they got caught up, they had a really good drink, they were really happy to see each other. And they were sort of traveling in the same spots, so you know, they bumped into each other fairly regularly. And they were so impressed with the craft beer that they were doing. They were like, look at these artisanal brewers who are using fine ingredients. They're using very small batch. Everything's under control. It's, you know, it's bespoke. It's fantastic. And you know what? These beers are bloody good. Much better than your Molson Coors, your Busch, your Bud Light. And they said, you know what? This is really good. Like, why don't we do something like this? However, at the time, the craft beer movement was really started taking off, and they were like, well, beer's really good, but why don't we do something that people aren't doing? Because at the moment they had Innocent Gun, they had Brewdog. Meantime, these guys were really making a scene, making a name for themselves back in the UK. And they said, well, no one's really doing anything with spirits. Like, you've got all the big names that are sort of standard. However, no one's really doing like sort of craft sort of style. No one's really putting in that love, that care, that artisanal craft. Why don't we do that? Cool, yeah, no worries. Working at Diageo's, all right. Working at Fuller's, all right. Cool, you know what, we're gonna go back up the road. They both went back to the UK. They both quit their jobs on the exact same day. And they both sold their houses, moved their family into rented accommodation to make investors see how keen they were. And they were keen. They were so keen that they got their premises, they got their still, £150,000 worth of still, I might add. And then they also met their master distiller. And so that's 2 out of the 3 things they need. So, master distiller here is Jared Brown. Jared Brown has anyone heard of him? No? He is a drinks legend. He has published numerous books. He's a drinks historian. He's been distilling since he was 10 years old, and that is no word of a lie. Jared's from upstate New York. It's pretty chilly there. And at 10 years old, he took a bottle of cider from his parents' fridge, opened it up, went outside, stuck it in the snow, let it freeze, wasn't quite frozen, poured off the alcohol that wasn't frozen, and repeated this process. So it's safe to say, playtime with Jared Brown when he was 10 years old was a wee bit interesting. So, they've got their distiller, they've got their still, they've got the premises, everything's good to go. Hey, HMRC, can I get a license for distilling? This was in 2006. Radio silence, nothing. 6 months go by, they get a phone call out of the blue, and HMRC go, hey guys, how's it going? Hey, no, sorry, we can't give you a license. Ah, crap. Cool, sorry, can I just get my house back? Hey, Diageo, can I get my job back? No, it wasn't quite like that. What happened was they went, well, how come? And they went, well, guys, there's a few things. So basically, the last license was given to Beefeater in the 1820s. So there's no one alive in our office that's ever given a license. Okay, cool, no worries. Hey, the second thing is, guys, see your still you've got? Prudence, who's beautiful, she's petite, she's fantastic. She's only 300 litres. And the law from 1751 says you need to have a still that's 1,800 litres, which is 6 times the size of Prudence. I think she's beautiful the way she is. There's no point in getting a large one. And so they went, all right, cool, no worries. Well, we're not going to give up just yet. So they went up to Scotland and they discussed with the HMRC up here, hey guys, how come you're giving out licenses all the time? And so this was then revisited and revised, and in 2009, this lovely man here, Gordon Brown, the White Forest Whitaker as I like to call him, he granted a license. He changed the law, so now there is no minimum amount that you need to distill. So yeah, give it up for Gordy, woo! So that's excellent. So we've now got our license, we've got our still, we've got Big Jared Brown looking after us. You know what? Game on. Let's make some gin. Let's make some vodka. And that's just what we did. So just now, we're passing around our London Dry. So this is our sort of flagship. With our London Dry, we start with 100% English wheat spirit, and we add 10 very, very classic botanicals. And with Jared Brown being a drinks historian and his sort of passion for keeping things very, very traditional, and the fact that we're bringing London Dry back home to London. Just to clarify, guys, to be a London Dry, you don't need to be made in London. You just have to be Juniper forward, which means Juniper needs to be the dominant flavour. Juniper forward, also you can add any flavours or essences after distilling, and you can only add 0.05 grams of sugar per litre if you choose to do so. We don't. We've got, so the botanicals that we have in there: juniper, coriander, we have orange and lemon, we have cassia and cinnamon, we have licorice and almond, and then finally we have orris and angelica. And with regards to juniper, juniper gives that lovely piney forward, like it should be on the nose just now, you should be getting juniper, that sort of piney, sort of evergreen tree. Secondly, you've got your citrus elements. Coriander seed actually provides quite a lot of the citrus. You've got a slightly sweeter sort of Seville orange in there, nice sort of marmaladiness, alongside some lemon peel. Then you have your cassia and cinnamon, which provide a nice sort of earthy warmth. And then you have your licorice and almond, which give a wee bit of a sweetness. And finally, the last two, the angelica and orris, they actually act as binding agents, and they bring the whole bouquet together. I like to think of each of the botanicals as a flower, and the orris root is the lovely ribbon around this fantastic bouquet. What does everyone think of it? Everyone enjoy it? It's fantastic. It's a gin drinker's gin. It's really, really good. So lastly, I would like to talk about the name. Why Sipsmith? Why? So when we started off, our original distillery was in Hammersmith. However, that's not got anything to do with our name. With regards to the level of craftsmanship we put in, we were looking back at other artisanal craftsmen. So your goldsmiths, your wordsmiths, your blacksmiths. We make something you sit, that you have to enjoy. We put in that same level of passion and that same level of skill. So we are Sipsmith. Thank you very much, guys. I really hope everyone enjoyed it. I've got some time for some questions if anyone wants to ask any.
Why the swan?
Why the swan? Prudence. So at the top of every still, once after you come through the helmet at the top, is then a small copper tube, which is in the shape of a swan's neck. And that's actually called a swan's neck. And so because prudence and because our stills are so important to us with the copper distillation, that's why. Yeah, I don't think that the bell from the swan was tied into the plague doctor, but you know what, however you want to look at it. Yeah, much more elegant and less sinister. Any other questions from anyone?
My Latin stuff, what is
the Latin is from, it says from ducks to swans. So, excellent. Cheers, guys. Thank you very much.